along with the tactical and practical preparation, seek out these moments of radical joy, seek out this community that is being created and connect, because that's what fascism does, is it disconnects us from one another. And the more that we can cultivate that, the more that we can cultivate joy, that gives us the basis and the blueprint for a safer, verdant, and more just world.
Welcome to the Practivist Pod, the practice of activism made practical.
As we are living through an attempted militarized authoritarian takeover of our country, we are reporting from the ground about what is really happening in the streets of LA.
And so that you are best prepared for all of the rallies and protests, including No King's Day on Saturday, June 14th, we have an important interview with the director of U.S. programs at Nonviolent Peaceforce, Kalaya'an Mendoza. And I'm Jessica Craven.
I'm Steve Pearson. Hi, Jess. I'm coming to you today from Santa Fe, New Mexico, where we've had a planned trip for our daughter, a graduation trip for our daughter, and it has been, honestly, it's been really nice. It's beautiful here, but also incredibly surreal and weird not to be in LA with my community right now. But fortunately, you have been there. I have been following your feed and everyone else's, just I'm so fucking pissed off for this denigration of my community, and you know, terrified in a sense for this, what is, I don't want to call it a test case because this is more serious than that, but we're going to be seeing this all over the country as Trump moves to, you know, try to militarize and go full authoritarianism with this regime.
It's been a crazy week. We'll talk a little bit further on in the podcast more about what's going on here, but I know what it feels like to be not in town when something big is happening to your city. I was out of town for the Los Angeles fire, so I know that feeling. And I'm also, in a way, I'm really glad you're out of town because it gives us the perspective from outside of the city, and I'm glad I'm here because I have found myself in the rather unique position of being able to give an insider perspective when there's actually not that many people sharing that, because it's quite different than what people think. So, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one thing that I really wanted to talk about. Two things, actually. First of all, I want to let people know that we do have an amazing interview coming up with Kalaya'an Mendoza. And, you know, we've been fielding all kinds of requests from people about how can we be safe and, you know, worried about the increased military presence and during these protests. So we brought someone who's a true expert in that, who's been on the front lines of many, many actions, literally all over the world. This is what he's been doing for decades. And so he's going to run down, you know, everything that you need to know about staying safe, about de-escalating and all of that. And also, I just want to say, like, I am very much a, you know, prepare for everything, better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it kind of person. I like to have my plan A, plan B, and plan C for everything that I do, you know, for this show even, you know. So I want people to take this information and take it seriously. But you know, I think you and I both anticipate, especially this weekend at the No King's Day protests, that it will be peaceful and joyous and community building and a repudiation of all that we're seeing around the country. And then the other thing, and then,
well, I was just going to say, and that is the beauty of our protest, is that it is peaceful and that we cannot buy into the falsehood being told by the Trump administration that it's not. our protests are always peaceful. We are peaceful people. And so we are going to really lean into that on Saturday. But anyway, you were saying.
Well, I want to kick you off to talk about your experience on the ground in LA because, and I really need everyone listening to this show to share Jess's experience and the truth about what's happening. I'm here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I went to dinner with my family last night and, because we look like tourists, the first question the waiter asked us was, where are you all from? And, I said, Los Angeles. And his reaction was, oh, wow. I'll bet you're really glad not to be there right now.
Right.
It must be really brutal. Are you affected by it at all? And I, kind of jumped down his throat a little bit. I had to back off the poor guy because I'm like, this is all lies. This is all manufactured. The protests have been within a couple of blocks anything that's gotten unruly has been within a couple of block radius. And anyway, but you're there on the ground. So, I want you to talk about what's really going on. And then I want all of our listeners to tell everybody to get on social media, to call their family and friends, because the mainstream media is just going to keep putting those lineups of, militarized gas cans going out of the couple of Waymos that got lit on fire and keep making it look like there's a lot more going on than actually is.
Right. Well, it's remarkable because I was on a call with a bunch of content creators yesterday, left content creators. And one of them said in passing, like, I don't know how bad the riots were this weekend. And I was like, we've had no riots. Like the misconceptions are really quite staggering. So first of all, as you know, but maybe some of our listeners don't know, Los Angeles is an enormous city. I mean, it's massive. It's a mega city, right? So 99% of the city is completely unaffected by this. And I would argue that lots of people are like, I don't want to say they're unaware. Probably most Angelinos are aware this is happening, but like there's no effect on day-to-day living at all for the majority of people living in this city. If you are undocumented, there is a very profound effect because the undocumented population, and really I would argue probably even the Latino population in general, but certainly undocumented people are terrified, and rightly so. It is a terror campaign going to our schools, going to our, Home Depots, going to all over the place. And I've heard many, many stories now of people who have been, taken who were citizens and thrown in a basement for 2 days before they could be gotten out and barely fed. And, it's insane what is happening here, but the insanity is on the part of our government, not on the part of our citizens. So I've been downtown a few times now. Sunday, my husband and my teenager went down. Yesterday and the day before I went down. It is, first of all, the number of protesters down there yesterday, in particular, while the Marines were apparently coming in, was like maybe a couple hundred people marching. Like there was a prayer vigil also, which I'll talk about later because it was just spectacularly beautiful. But downtown Los Angeles is a ghost town. There is nobody there except for the most insane number of police officers you have ever seen in your life. And now the National Guard, the sheriffs, police from other parts of the Southern California area. And I guess I did not see the armed forces. I'm assuming they're down there somewhere, but there's nothing for them to do. So they're all standing around. They're lined up. They're looking really fierce and scary, but there's just a small number of protesters. And then if you go down to the detention center, which is the place where, that's where people are going down because their family are inside. There's some clergy down there, and there's maybe, like I said, there were maybe 100, 200 protesters, and that's it. There is a tremendous amount of graffiti. I will say that, and again, like I've talked about this, I don't approve of it, but that's what people have done. But other than that, like I heard there was looting. I don't know where that happened. I saw one broken window. There is no other property damage that I can see other than graffiti and the one broken window. And some probably teenagers set some Waymos on fire one night. Other than that, everything is normal, but I can't describe how disproportionate the military and law enforcement response is to what is actually happening there. It's insane. It is insane, insane. And to the extent that I felt unsafe, it was 100% because of the police and the National Guard, not because of the protesters. Hands down. Nobody feels unsafe from the protesters. So that I want to be really clear about that. And there is no rioting. So please tell your friends that is not happening. Yeah.
And that is obviously by design. This has been something that has been coming for a long time, in fact, we know that Trump wanted to do this in his first term too. And back then there was some, military advisors who, weren't, so feckless. And so, now you've got Hegseth, who is deploying Marines without any resources, without any actual orders, without rules of engagement. And all of that is a big show. It's posturing, and it's to, try to stoke fear and uncertainty and keep people away, specifically in the ramp up to No King's Day as well, and his parade for his birthday in D.C. So what do we do? First of all, No King's Day, this Saturday. We've been talking about this for weeks, about how important it is that that we show the country, that we show Trump, that we show the world, that we are standing up and that we won't be intimidated by this, and that we're going to do it together in a peaceful way. We've been talking about that for weeks. It's even more important right now. And I really believe what I'm seeing already all over the country. People are protesting now, protesting the immigration raids and protesting what's going on with LA. I'm seeing so much, support for Los Angeles and California because, they know that this is coming for them next, that this is all part of the plan. So No King's Day is this Saturday. And, again, we're going to give you all the resources you need in the interview. We're going to share some great resources in the show notes to prepare for that. But what I would expect is, a joyous sense of community coming together and a repudiation of this regime and the authoritarianism that none of us, Democrats or Republicans, want here in America.
No. Yeah. And I really want to encourage people, because I had a friend ask me, a friend who lives here in LA, who hasn't been downtown herself. But, as most people in LA have not, like most people are just, even in LA, don't know exactly what's going down in downtown LA. They're hearing, the media. And so they're staying away, afraid, understandable. But so she said, I want to go march downtown on No King's Day. Do I have to bring a gas mask? That's not what's going to happen on Saturday. This is not, we've got to imagine this as a peaceful protest. No Kings in downtown LA is a little bit of an unusual situation because we have this other situation going, but even there, this has been permitted for months. There is a route, however you say that is planned, and we are going to march peacefully. The only time that tear gas is happening is when police are trying to get people to back away from a spot where they're not supposed to be, and they're, in my opinion, very trigger happy with the tear gas. But we are on a pre-planned route that is permitted, and we are going to march peacefully. And what I want to ask you all is, please do not be afraid. Go out and protest. Go and walk peacefully and be with your community. I cannot tell you how much better you will feel. And it is so important in this moment that we show them that A, we are not afraid, that B, there are more of us than there are of them, and C, that we are peaceful and that we are a community who will not back down. I just saw footage, I think it's from right now, of New York, giant march there. I can't 100% confirm that that's from right now, but it's so moving to me. We are so powerful when we just go walk together in that way. So, commit to No Kings. It's literally, I don't think, ever been more important in American history that we all go out and stand with each other in the streets this Saturday. I think I can safely say this is one of the most important days in American history. And so we go out and be part of history in the best possible way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, we have, on this show and in private as well, not, been particularly enamored with our current California governor, Gavin Newsom, what he's been doing. He, gave a great address last night. He has been full-throated, about what's happening. And, share that too, because that's an important message that he's putting out there about how California is going to fight back. And,
I'm raising my hand. I just want to say,
yes.
I've been,
Jess,
call on me. Yes, thank
go
you.
Ahead.
I've been very hard on Gavin Newsom. I literally I've been very hard on him, and I stand by my being very hard on him, but I will say, in case, he or one of his aides is listening, I really do want to shout him out in this moment. This moment, he has risen to the occasion. And I think we all feel that way. I mean, for what I'm seeing on social media is people saying, I have had my problems with him, but this is where he's at his best. He knows how to stand up to a bully. And that is what the moment requires. And it is great to see. I haven't actually watched the address yet because I was downtown until quite late last night, and then posting about it. But it sounds like he was great. And this is what we need. We need people who will stand up to bullies. And so bravo, Gavin Newsom. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's the leadership that we need, and he's stepping into it, and makes me really proud to have him as our governor right now. And this foil to Trump. And, I encourage everyone to listen to the speech. The end, he really talks about us and the importance of citizens making their voices heard, using their First Amendment rights, and getting out there and peacefully protesting, and encouraging us not to be intimidated and to go out there and protest everything that we've been saying on this show. So, look at us all aligned with Gavin Newsom. Yes. I love it.
Crazy. And and I think Karen Bass, she was at the prayer vigil I was at last night, and she, I think people have quibbles with how she's handling it, but overall, I think she's been doing a good job too. Again, I'm not as in touch with the minutia of what the criticisms are. There were a few people sort of yelling at her, but for the most part, it's a really hard situation. And I think she's doing a good job. I also want to say something else on the subject of these protests, which is, how we've been talking a lot about, where are the young people? Why are the young people not involved? Well, let me tell you something. This situation has absolutely galvanized the young people. Just anecdotally, my kid is desperate to be downtown all the time. I'm having to basically, drag them off. And then they are also telling me that their friends who they've never seen post anything political, and these are, teenagers, 15, 16, 17, they said they are lit up about this. ICE is not popular with the young folk, let's just say. And they're really upset. They are feeling protective of their city. They are feeling protective of the people who are being separated from their families. And we wanted the young people to be involved. I think that we will see many, many more young people on Saturday than we might have if all of this had not unfolded. So.
Well, that is really, really hopeful. I guess it's a good segue to ask you, besides that, what is your reason for hope this week?
Oh, well, I'll tell you that for sure. So yesterday we went to this prayer vigil that was set for 6 p.m. in Grand Park. We learned that there was a curfew for 8, and then there was a great deal of confusion about whether or not it was even happening. So MJ and I decided to go downtown because I kind of wanted to see what was going on anyway. I'm trying to document it. But we thought we would go and try to go to this prayer vigil, but we were pretty certain it wasn't going to happen. So we got off, we started walking through downtown, and again, like I said, ghost town, except for massive, insane presence of law enforcement. So we're walking through, it feels like a battle zone, but only because of them. And I'm just thinking, this is not going to be there. There's no way. I would have actually turned around and gone home, but MJ was like, let's just walk out. So we walk up to Grand Park, and you come up these stairs. Suddenly, this is like It's insane. We hear singing. And we get up the stairs, and there's Grand Park full, I'd say about half full, with every faith leader you can imagine standing on the stage, and they're singing. And the prayer vigil was happening. And we went and we stood there for about an hour and 15 minutes while faith leaders from every possible, imaginable religious background, Rabbi Sharon Brous was there, who's incredible. The Archbishop of LA, I believe, was there. Bunch of people. Each of them spoke. Between the speeches, there were songs. We heard from a couple of people who had family members taken. It was unbelievably moving. And at the very end, the faith leader said, we are now going to march down to the detention center because we want to show those people that we care. You are welcome to follow us. You don't have to. Do what you feel comfortable with. It's going to be peaceful. And of course, everybody started walking down there singing. You know, people had flowers, people had candles, and it was just the most spectacularly beautiful moment. And we marched down to the detention center. We got down there about 20 minutes before curfew. Totally peaceful. There were maybe 200 people down there just standing in front, chanting, blowing bubbles. And I just thought, I am so grateful to be on this side of this fight. And I just want to read to you real quickly a quote. Now, I'm really sorry I didn't get this woman's name, but she was a Sikh faith leader. And in her talk, one of the things she said was, the brief high of domination is nothing compared to the infinite love of community. She was talking about even calling in the law enforcement and calling in the people who were on the wrong side of this, and she's right. Whatever high they're getting off of trying to crush us, the high of being in a community like I was in last night and seeing what actual religious faith and actual religious decency looks like, one of the most beautiful things I've ever been to in my life. And I was so grateful that MJ and I had braved the sort of like scariness of walking through the police to get there. And something I will never forget for as long as I live. An extraordinary experience. Wow. Yeah. So go ahead, Steve. Top that.
That sounds incredible. I can't. Yeah, I decided as soon as you started talking that I was not going to even share a reason for hope beyond that.
Come on.
And I'm sorry that I wasn't. I'm sorry that I wasn't there with you. I would have really liked to have been there, experiencing that with you. But yeah, no, all of that is my reason for hope too, is everyone who, is showing up and will be showing up, this weekend, and who's showing up all over the country, in the face of this intimidation from these bullies, from these weak ass bullies who are, breaking the law to engage in the military against peaceful protests, exercising their First Amendment rights, and we're onto them. And frankly, they fucked with the wrong city to start off with.
Did. Absolutely.
If they really wanted to try to do something, they could have maybe tried another city in a red state where they would have had more sympathetic citizens there. I don't know. But
they won't do it to a red state. They won't do it to a red state because they know they need those undocumented workers, or the economies will collapse there. I mean, that's the thing that's so hypocritical and fucked up about this whole situation, is that they won't mess with red states. They're coming after blue states specifically, but you are right. You do not mess with Los Angeles, especially the Los Angeles that has just been through the fires. Like, this city is bonded. P.S. It is undocumented people rebuilding Altadena, clearing that wreckage. That is all our immigrant workers. It is, you just do not fuck with us right now. This is a city that is like hardened by fire, literally.
Forged by fire.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we are. And also we're a majority minority city too. And we take care of each other, and I love our city and celebrate everything about it. And I know so many others feel like that, and people all over the country are. So that gives me a lot of hope. And let me just end my What Gives Me Hope segment by saying, fuck you, Stephen Miller. What a fucking Nazi scumbag that guy is. Just want to throw that little nugget of hope out there. I'm
with you. Pure evil. I mean,
maybe,
it's really
maybe
unusual
I edit
to see
that
pure
out.
evil.
Maybe I don't need to end on that tone, but maybe we don't. Okay. Maybe we just leave it in, because he's the architect of a lot of this stuff, and so many people are having their lives destroyed because of it. So.
And I would just say one thing on that before we move on, which is that one thing the organizers are really asking us to focus on here is the stories of the people who are impacted by these raids. Like another thing Trump wants to distract us from is the human tragedy and the stories of these individuals. And so look for them because they're out there. And once we start talking about that, that's the thing that matters. That's the reason that we're acting here. We are acting out of love and grief for the people in our community whose lives are being ruined. And that's what we're seeing even in red states. That's what we're seeing, where ICE has come in and taken community members that are valuable and that are known in these red states too. And we've seen people stand up in the reddest of areas to protect their neighbors, to protect their community members. And so that gives me hope, it's heartbreaking that so many people's lives are being so utterly just destroyed as a result of these actions. But I know we're going to fight it. I know we're going to put a stop to this together. We are.
So having said all of that and talking about how we're going to nonviolently and effectively fight, I really am so honored that we have Kalaya'an Mendoza to give us all the resources we need in this great interview. Kalaya'an Mendoza serves as the director of U.S. programs at Nonviolent Peaceforce. He is a human rights defender, street medic, and community safety and mutual protection trainer. He is an award-winning facilitator of holistic safety and security, as well as a recognized expert in disaster preparedness. He's also the co-founder of Across Front Lines, an organization that works with frontline human rights defenders. Perfect guest to have on right now. Kalaya'an, thank you so much for being here.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
Absolutely. Obviously, we have seen an enormous escalation by the Trump regime in Los Angeles and coming soon all over the country. As we are preparing for what will be the largest day of protest yet this Saturday, June 14th, the No King's Day protests. I'm really, really grateful for your expertise. But before we jump right into it, I'd love to hear a little bit about your personal story and learn more about your work with Nonviolent Peaceforce and Across Front Lines.
Sure, most definitely. Nonviolent Peaceforce is the international humanitarian protection organization that utilizes what's called unarmed civilian protection in both declared and undeclared conflict zones around the world, whether it is in South Sudan or South Brooklyn. My work really started back in 1999, prior to the World Trade Organization protests in Seattle. I was trained up as a street medic, and since then I've worked with Amnesty International in helping support the human rights observation teams in Ferguson in 2014, in Standing Rock in 2016, along with the RNC and DNC in 2016. Since then, I have been training and working alongside frontline communities, whether that is with Maori organizers and community members in New Zealand and Aotearoa during the occupation of Ihumatao, or here in the United States, working alongside Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQ organizations and collectives.
Amazing. So what first drew you into this particular work? You ran right to the front lines, right? What brought you there?
Yeah. As a Filipino American, my family left the Philippines during the height of the Marcos regime, during martial law. And that's something that stuck with me ever since I was a 6-year-old kid. Since then, I've really found that my role isn't necessarily holding up the banner or leading the chants, although I've done that, but really around building safety ecosystems alongside communities who are looking for a non-carceral approaches that aren't basically ways that we can keep each other safe that doesn't come down the barrel of a gun.
Well, perfect segue. Sadly, on your Instagram, you identify as your protest safety kuya.
Yeah.
I think in Filipino that means big brother or something like that. Is that right?
Yes, it does.
Oh, okay. So, there's a lot of advice circling around right now on, how to stay safe during protests, but, let's jump right into it. Can you give us a basic rundown on best practices in your trainings for folks who are going to be participating in protests?
Most definitely. I'd like to invite folks to think about participating in actions from a before, during, and after framework. For folks that are going to be in the streets, to really think about prior to coming into the action, what are your activation points, like what are otherwise known as trigger points, and what are your anchor points, those things that keep you cool, calm, collected, and connected, and to make sure to share that with your safety team or with your buddy or partner that's going with you. And I say all that to make sure that folks are not going out in the streets by themselves. And you don't necessarily need to be with a ton of people, but you have to make sure that you have at least one person in a location that has your personal information in the event that in the unfortunate event that you might be arrested or you might be injured at a protest. And that's what we've really been seeing in the last 10 years, the continued militarization of the police here in the United States. We saw this in Ferguson. We saw this in Standing Rock. So really think about the before. What are the things that you need to do to prepare yourself? Making sure to do some basic research about the type of police tactics that have been used at protests previously. If they've utilized impact munitions such as pepper balls, pepper spray, or tear gas, what are types of gear that you need in order to keep yourself and others safe or to exit that location. For the during, practicing situational awareness at all times. And what this means is telling yourself, I'm going to turn on my OODA loop, which stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. This is a framework that folks can utilize. It's a crisis decision-making tool that you can fall back on when everything falls apart. In essence, it's taking in information around you, identifying what the baseline is for that particular situation, and that helps you identify potential anomalies, like if the state security will start advancing on protesters or if they're going to start using munitions, and then coming up with your plan of action and then moving through it. And once you're home safe, turn it off. The reason we tell folks to turn on and off their situational awareness or their OODA loop is to ensure that they are not in a state of hypervigilance once you come back home from a protest. Along with practicing your situational awareness is really making sure, just like how protesters in Hong Kong in 2019 taught us, is to really move like water. That means adjusting to the situation.
It's a Bruce Lee quote, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
His wisdom will always remain with us, most especially in these times. And it's really about keeping yourself and others safe as you enact your fundamental human rights. So that means knowing your primary and secondary exits. It's always better to have, it's best to have 2 exit points. It's better to have 3. In any situation. You don't want to be kettled in or surrounded by state security. And you always want to make sure that you're keeping aware of all of your surroundings and any potential violence that might happen to you or others from the state or non-state actors. And lastly, really thinking about your aftercare. When you return home, how do you keep yourself, how do you practice community care in that moment? For a lot of folks that have been doing this work, we know that after an action can be extremely empowering, but also isolating, because you might come home to a partner or family that may not necessarily understand why you were out there. So really having a space where you can debrief with the folks that you had gone to the action to, or asking your loved ones to hold space for you, to do what we call the holistic check-in, which is answering 4 questions. What are you feeling physically in the moment? psychosocially or emotionally, energetically, and what support do you need in this moment? And practicing some basic somatic practices. I know that Prentice Hemphill just shared some yesterday on Instagram, and we have a list of those on our website at Nonviolent Peaceforce.
We'll share those resources on our show notes too, so people can read that list. And there's some great, just basic, and even on your Instagram, I'll put that up there too. I suggest everyone follow you on Instagram because you've got some great checklists and basic resources, on there as well. And I love the check-in at the end too. I think that's really important. I mean, we talk about that on, building resilience on this show all the time. And, we find so much, healing and joy in community. We find joy in these big protests that we're going to. But right now, they're trying to steal our joy, which is why having joy in these actions is such a revolutionary act. But, certainly making sure you do it with the community. I made the mistake. I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing, but, it was, I guess, 2017, 2018, right after Heather Heyer was killed, and there was a anti-fascist protest in Los Angeles, and I wanted to go. I couldn't find anyone to go with me. Everyone was just busy. It was during the day. It was a work day. My family was out of town, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go anyway. I called an Uber or Lyft rather, I always sit in the front because I get a little car sick. So I asked, the Lyft driver if I could sit in the front. And she said, normally I wouldn't let you, but I can see where you're going and I support what you're doing. So, I'll do that. And she said that she was thinking about going too, but didn't want to go by herself. So she ended up parking and we, marched together and spent the whole time together. And I made a lifelong friend out of that too. But, I don't know. I digress on that story. One thing I did want to ask you is, what you laid out is really important. And, all the scenarios that we're facing, we of course want to prepare for the worst, but hope for the best and hope that we don't need all the preparation. But, a lot of our listeners are older activists who have been showing up at like Tesla takedowns and hands-off protests. And even though I know they will not be deterred, and this Saturday's protest is going to be, potentially the biggest in our history, they also don't want to put themselves in bad situations or in harm's way. They're not looking to do that. So, how would you tweak your advice for protesters who are older, who want to prepare for this?
Yeah, for older folks and folks that are really committed to or wanting to be on the ground, I think making sure that they come up with a very precise safety plan, going in with a group of folks that you trust, and that can help get you in or out of that situation, and making sure that you have your own needs taken care of, whether that means making sure that you have your medication with your prescription, because there have been instances where folks have been arrested and not been given access to be able to get their meds. I've been in situations where folks have forgotten their asthma inhalers, so that's why I carry an extra one now. So really thinking about your own needs. But also I want to invite folks to think about what I've learned from disabled organizers like Alice Wong and Mia Mingus around doing what's called digital peacekeeping or remote support. Basically, you'd be monitoring police scanners, watching through Instagram or TikTok lives, and feeding real-time information to your team, which can be extremely vital to ensure that for folks that may be even more vulnerable, for trans folks, for undocumented folks who choose to be at the protest, to be able to give that real-time information. And we all have a place in this work. Sometimes it may not be necessarily in the streets, but it could be part of the aftercare that we provide for folks that are just coming back from an action, who have seen state violence for the first time. But if folks are really fierce about wanting to be on the ground, coming up with your safety plan, recognizing what your needs are, identifying what your potential vulnerabilities are and seeking out capacities to help mitigate those vulnerabilities. So for instance, I am, I've dealt with, state violence for a very long time, and I know that, my back seizes up. It's an old protest injury from Beijing. And I let my team know that I need to, tap out at, once this happens. So making sure to share with your team, what your specific needs are, what are some things that they can do to support you, and vice versa, because we really need to be practicing the level of community care and really radical care in this moment, because we're all we have.
Yeah, well said. You have obviously seen and been in the middle of some really, really hard situations all over the world. What is especially important for us to pay attention to here in light of this, military presence now? I mean, they've been using tear gas, flashbangs, and rubber bullets in Los Angeles. How do we best prepare for all of that?
Definitely. So, I know that there's some advice going around for folks to use milk, or to use law, which is liquid antacid water solution. I really advise against that because one, I field tested both and found that they haven't been very helpful and aren't really accessible. So making sure that you have an extra bottle of water with you, with either the top punctured at the top, so you can do your own eye flush or provide eye flush for someone else if there's not a street medic nearby. If you have, we're still in a pandemic, and a lot of people's immune systems have been very impacted. To make sure that you know what your limitations are, and to ensure that you have what you need to either continue being on the ground, or to get out of there as quickly as possible. That includes having an asthma inhaler, having your medication, but also doing a little bit of research about what are the closest hospitals that are near the protests. I've been at protests where the police have kept EMTs and paramedics behind them. So a lot of the protesters were injured and would not be able to access them. So we had to provide, we've had to provide what's called protective accompaniment to pregnant folks. This happened in 2021 at the Dante Wright protests in Brooklyn Park near Minneapolis. And they had gone to the protests wanting to show their support and didn't realize that it would be a militarized response. So making sure that you do what you need to do in order to stay as long as you consent into. And I want to just touch on the story that you shared earlier. Along with some of the more practical and tactical advice, I want to call folks to find those moments of community and joy. As we saw, sorry, I always get emotional thinking about this, but as we saw in LA, there were groups of folks that were doing line dances during the action. There was a Tejano band that was singing. There were street vendors that were selling. Find those moments, right?
Yeah.
And we saw that in Occupy, we saw that in Standing Rock, in Ferguson, most especially, where the community came together. And I feel like a lot of folks most recently saw that with the student encampments. This was the first time that a lot of students had experienced state violence, but also the first time that I heard from a lot of students and youth that they felt a sense of connection and community with their folks. Their basic needs were being met. People were being fed. People had access to some basic health care, and there was a innate need for everyone to keep each other safe and protect one another in a time of crisis. So along with the tactical and practical preparation, seek out these moments of radical joy, seek out this community that is being created, and connect, because that's what fascism does, is it disconnects us from one another. And the more that we can cultivate that, the more that we can cultivate joy, that gives us the basis and the blueprint for a safer, verdant, and more just world.
Absolutely. And just after the National Guard were deployed and we had a big protest to release David Huerta, SEIU president, that was very peaceful. There was no conflict. And like you said, lots of joy, lots of dancing and music. And it segues perfectly into the next question I was going to ask you, which is more about de-escalation and how we best do that. And, obviously, singing, dancing, all of that stuff, spreading joy, like it makes it awfully hard, to, escalate violence when there is so much apparent joy and community. But can you talk about, I want to ask you two-parter on this. Obviously, we have a militarized, response now. So best ways to de-escalate around that. And then also, there's always a few bad actors, sometimes individuals, sometimes groups that do show up to stir up trouble, amidst our ranks. What's the best way to de-escalate all of that?
The way that we train folks on de-escalation is very different than other organizations, in that you can only really de-escalate yourself and those you are in the right relationship with. That means folks that you know, folks that you have come there with. And de-escalation is really about going to a place of regulation where you're within your window of tolerance, where you're cool, calm, collected, and connected, and able to make decisions in real time. With regards to preparing for militarized or military force, I think it's important for folks to really be upfront about what their survival responses are. Are they fight, flight, freeze, or fawn when aggression happens to them? Or they might be flight, or I'm a fawn type person, or I freeze when aggression happens to me. But when it happens to others, I go into fight mode. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go in swinging, but rather you're in a state of hyper arousal and everything's speeding up. So understanding how you respond in those moments and sharing that with your buddy or with your team or with your group is really the first step in knowing how to de-escalate yourself. And if there is a situation where you are, where you have consented into, whether you are prepared and trained, you can do what's called protective intervention. That means going in and doing what's called protective presence or protective accompaniment. And that is being a third party in a potential conflict situation and having the aggressor direct their energy towards you. So really thinking of yourself as a lightning rod. And you really need to have to be ready to kind of like receive that energy and potentially that violence in order to get that other person out of the situation. And I think that that is something that needs to we all need to practice in these spaces. There's going to be a myriad of different tactics from folks. I know a lot of the immigrant rights organizations in LA have been training and working with their communities and also their staff and volunteers to be able to respond using nonviolence. And I think that folks just need to recognize a point when their stay or go threshold. And that means thinking through what are some likely scenarios that might arise where they're going to need to leave. For instance, for anyone that is undocumented and are committed to being on the ground, to really think through if they start seeing an advancement or a kettling action where the state security surrounds everyone, that they immediately leave from there. I can't really tell anyone how to respond or how to act, but the first step in de-escalating is de-escalating yourself. The second step is if you're seeing that, whether that's externally or internally, and you have the capacity to, is to do protective intervention, and to call in folks that you may feel are putting undocumented folks, LGBTQ folks, most especially trans and Black trans folks, at risk and danger. Because a lot of times for these mass mobilizations, there are folks that are coming in that have never been, at a protest. So we need to really think about, and center those most directly affected by the violence that we are against in that moment.
All great advice. And just another reminder to everyone who's listening, these protests are, widely very peaceful. And, most of the actions that we've seen, including Los Angeles, first of all, have been blown up by the media. And, the same pictures of the burning Waymos get circulated over and over again when it's been a few hundred people in those, after dark actions, where the bulk of the folks have been, at the organized protests and very, very peaceful. So, but again, very important to prepare for everything. And I wanted to ask you also, besides just the larger scale organized protests like we're seeing in Los Angeles and we're going to see all over the country on Saturday and ongoing, what are some best practices just if we encounter ICE in our community, and we see that happening? That's where a lot of these kind of, super fast, growing protests have happened, and there's not the support around it. And there's obviously, as you say, state police presence, that's very strong. So, what's the good rule of thumb for how we advocate, and let people know about ICE actions if we come across them?
Definitely. First, you want to make sure that when you're assessing, that it is actually an ICE, that it is ICE, or it may be
very important. Actually, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm actually in New Mexico right now, and came across a couple of people in a parking lot being arrested, and of course, immediately, in light of everything, thought that maybe it was an immigration issue, and confirmed that it was the Albuquerque police and that it was unrelated to immigration. So anyway, didn't mean to cut you off, but that's important.
No worries. I like to tell folks to use SALUTE, which stands for size, activity, location, uniform or unit identification, time, and equipment. When sharing out information, we don't want to cause or spread panic. We want to spread power. We want to spread real information. So making sure when you're documenting that you're documenting all of those things to let the community know. If you're going to be posting that on social media, letting the community know that this is all of the information that you have from this, if you've identified that it was a potential ICE raid, and keeping that for potential use. I know the ACLU in 2020 had had an app or a call-in line where folks could send in videos of the use of police force against protesters. So if you can't intervene, and I think most folks tend to not, it's okay to document. It's okay to be there and to bear witness and document, and to collect this, because part of what we're looking at is not just attacks on the ground, but also this narrative attack against our communities, that we are foreigners, that we are criminals, that immigrants are the source of this country's problems. So I think it's very important that folks move from a place of being de-escalating themselves, stay within your window of tolerance where you're cool, calm, collected, and connected. Use SALUTE and document.
Great. Okay, well, that's a lot of information. And again, we will have links up on our show notes page. So we'll have a very comprehensive list for people to go view and prepare with. I couldn't be more grateful to you and to your work, and for taking the time at short notice to join us this week. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask you the last question that we ask everybody on our show. And you have been seen a lot. So I think you have some context for this question. What is bringing you the most hope right now?
I think seeing the people's response, the community's response, whether that is those that have been most directly affected by violence, or our comrades and allies who may not identify as an immigrant, and putting their bodies on the line, but also seeing these ecosystems of care that are being built on the ground, whether it's folks that are passing out snacks and water, street medics, folks that are providing protective presence and protective accompaniment. I think in these moments, we are seeing a vision for the world that we want to live in. And I think the more that I see that, the more I am heartened to know that we may have been left behind by systems of oppression, but we have each other. And community and solidarity is what has always kept our communities safe and thriving.
Beautiful. Kalaya'an, thank you again so much for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Dave.
All right. So just a reminder, our call-in number, if you want to share your experience at protests, rallies in LA or elsewhere, is 818-824-4286. And everyone's been busy in the streets, busy doing the work. So too busy to call mom and dad. That's fine. We get it. But we do want to hear your experience at the No Kings rally and everything next week. And in the meantime, just want to say thank you to everyone that's giving us so much hope and energy, seeing all the things that you're doing in the face of all these atrocities.
Yeah. Second that 100%. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's planning on going to No Kings. It really couldn't be more important. And thank you to everybody who's standing up for LA right now. We see you, and we really need it, and we really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us today. Don't forget that all of the links for our actions, including the great resources to prepare you for these rallies, are in the show notes. So don't just listen, click on those links and take action. Please do subscribe, rate, and review our show on Apple, YouTube, or wherever you are finding us. And share our show with your friends and family members. Make sure they are showing up and clicking those links. If you're able to support our show on Substack, we'd be really grateful for that. And you'll get an ad-free version of our show as well. We will be back next week with more Practivist Pod. And until then, don't forget, hope is in action.